The Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the SpotTrack.com podcast. I'm Kevin Sylvester, along with Paul Peck. We're from BuffaloSportsPage.com and Mike Giannetti, the founder of SpotTrack.com. We have lots of contracts to talk about. NBA we'll get to with Kevin Love. We've got quarterbacks to talk about. Training camps are opening in the NFL. And a big one, Paul, a shocker. Guaranteed money for Todd Gurley.
Well, yeah. How much, Mike, on this podcast have we talked about running back salaries and the financial positioning of running backs? And most of what we've talked about has been how teams are reluctant to pay any of them, including Le'Veon Bell. So when you see the Rams do what they did with Gurley, I'm curious to know whether you're surprised by it. Is the money, is there something behind the money? Is it because Gurley's young? I mean, what went into what seems to have bucked the trend of nobody wanting to pay running backs?
I wasn't surprised because I think the Rams are very intelligent to get this done now before the big boom comes, right? Rather than wait for the market to set itself, they have established this market with their guy who's 23 years old, right? Who's the offensive MVP.
Which is a big difference compared to Le'Veon Bell in my mind. A lot more tread on the tires.
It's apples and oranges. This guy had 2 years left, so you're essentially putting a 6-year deal out there, even though 4's, the more practical way to look at this. So let's say it's a 4-year deal, mostly guaranteed. You're getting this guy to 27 years old. He's gonna have a third contract year. This is great for everybody. They're gonna get the Rams get him in his prime at a competitive price. He gets out, he gets a third contract there or somewhere else, and he's got a nice little career ahead of him. More teams need to do this with more positions, including the running back position, and we're going to see it.
Maybe more so with the running back position.
That's right.
Because of what we've talked so much about, that beyond age 28, you never know what you're getting out of these guys.
Right, and when you've got a player of Gurley's caliber who essentially does run your offense, I mean, they run that offense through him. They're going to do it again this year. You should pay him. You should be okay paying him because it will force you to pay everybody else less, which is a good thing. You don't want to allocate money where it doesn't belong. And right now, the Rams' money belongs with Todd Gurley. Next year, it's going to belong to Jared Goff. We don't know about the defensive side. That's certainly a question mark. But let's switch back to the running back market because, yes, it is surprising that it's $15 million a year, that it's $45 million guaranteed, just because we haven't seen it in 5 years, right, since Adrian Peterson. But it's not surprising because this was always coming, right? If you look at the free agent prospects next year with Bell and David Johnson and really a few more guys that could get paid, and what we've already seen, we saw Duke Johnson get paid. Did anybody see that coming? No. Duke Johnson got some serious guaranteed money for 2 years.
He isn't even necessarily the starter there.
He might be the third running back there, and I'm not joking. So this was coming. This was sort of bubbling up, and the reason that it's a big story isn't just because of the money. It's because it's in the waking of Bell not getting it. And that's not a Le'Veon Bell problem. Yes, Bell's 26, and that's part of the discussion. This is a Steelers problem. The Steelers were never going to do this. They don't do this with anybody. They barely did this with Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown got basically a 2-year deal, right? Everything else is sort of fluff on that contract, and that's just because that's what the Steelers do. They don't guarantee anything because they have put it in stone rigidly. We're not doing this. We're not going to guarantee contracts. It's going to change, by the way. It's going to have to change for them to stay competitive because they've been fortunate to have this core, right, that has been loyal to them, very loyal. I mean, the Roethlisbergers and the Browns have just agreed to go along with this process, and it's worked because they're good enough and they work together. When Bell leaves, when Ben leaves, and that could both happen next year,
yeah, that's
and
true.
They've got to rebuild. They're going to have a hell of a time rebuilding with that process in place, with guaranteed contracts coming, right? I mean, we've seen it in the quarterback position. We're going to start to see it elsewhere. It's coming, and they're going to be left behind if they don't change this process somewhat. So I'm not surprised that Gurley got it. It's not surprising that Bell didn't get it, and more of it's going to come. Bell's going to get paid. Bell's going to get paid, a nice 3-year, maybe 2-year fully guaranteed deal. Let's say the Jets, let's say the Colts. There's going to be teams out there that will do this for Le'Veon Bell next year.
Even after another 350
they're going to beat him into the ground
season?
this year.
That's what I mean.
They're going to run him into the ground, but it's going to be a Matt Forte situation, which is similar to what happened with the Jets, right? I mean, the Bears ran him into the ground, didn't want to pay him. The Jets agreed to pay him, and Forte was okay for a couple of years there. He was an okay asset, which is what Bell's going to be. Bell's not going to be elite, but he's going to be paid fairly elite because he can catch 50, 60 balls for you. And in this game, in this modern game, that's worth more than a two-down running back. So he'll get his money. David Johnson is really the one to watch because David Johnson should stay in Arizona. They have no reason not to pay him outside of the injuries. And he can, if he shows that he's back to form, I expect like a week 6, week 7, big time money contract.
And he missed a year, which extends his
sure.
career.
His scrimmage carries and his receptions are so much lower. His impact is so much lower than Bell. It's on par with like an Ezekiel Elliott, who also has missed some time. And we'll see what happens this year because I have a feeling he's going to get pounded in the ground this year as well. But we've talked about this before, how missing some time is not necessarily a bad thing on that rookie deal, right? The rookie deal is locked in. You know what you're getting, and teams know what they're paying. And if you don't run yourself into the ground for 4 years, you're going to do pretty well in that second contract.
Well, here's a dilemma for a guy like Bell, right?
Yeah.
Without a guaranteed contract, guaranteed money, and by the way, wasn't he the first guy to tweet?
Right. But it is guaranteed money. It's a franchise tag. It's guaranteed for a year, right?
I'm talking about going forward.
No, I know,
right?
but I mean, he's got his money, and it's a good chunk of it this year.
I know, but he's already. Let's not kid ourselves. He's already looking forward to the next contract. He's looking forward to free agency next year.
Oh yeah.
And so the dilemma for him is going to be if he's nicked up, does he play? How much does he play? Right? Or does he sit? His agent will probably, hey, you know what? You got a little dink shoulder there. You need to heal that up. Right. Right?
He's got no more loyalty to the Steelers.
It certainly seems that way, but that can change. That
That's what you risk with these guys on expiring contracts, especially in this position. That's what the Giants are going to risk with Odell Beckham Jr. That's and maybe a little less there because they do have the franchise tag available if they need it for him. That the Steelers obviously don't. The Steelers are not franchise tagging a third time on Le'Veon Bell. So it's something to think about, especially if you're a fantasy owner out there, right? I mean, is Le'Veon Bell gonna mail it in for 6 weeks or at least play 75%, right? For 16 weeks?
Yeah.
Because he knows how much it will cost him if he's injured at the end of the season. Right?
It is a dilemma for him because for him to perform to earn that money again, he needs a ton of touches, but that's going to take some tread off the tires. And listen, GMs aren't stupid. They know, they study this stuff. They have guys like Mike in the front office analytically looking at this. Well, moving forward, his value's this because he's got so much wear and tear on the tire. You only get 30,000 miles, maybe 35 on a set of tires, Paul.
That's true.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
So, it all depends.
And it's funny you bring that up, Kevin, because that is a very significant focus of NFL teams in the scouting process. That, you think of these great college running backs that have been stars. That's a negative because they're tracking how many carries they have. And I think, a running back who maybe bursts on the scene as a sophomore or a junior who hadn't started before and has one really impressive year, the NFL likes that better than a guy who's a 4-year starter who's carried the ball 200 times each of the 4 years.
So let's finish this on this question because it's interesting the way we've sort of poised this as, Bell needs to go get paid, but Bell really can't go out there and, have 2,000 yards from scrimmage in risking an injury that could stop him from getting paid. Does it change if they trade him? Should the Steelers trade Le'Veon Bell?
No, you've got the window to win with Roethlisberger.
But what if
with
he's not?
Brown.
What if they know he's not going to go 100%?
Let me
what
say
if their
this.
season comes off the rails a little too?
But let me just say this: I'm talking like into the season. I don't want to question Le'Veon Bell's competitive integrity because I think that's foolish to do, and that's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying when he gets hurt, because all players get hurt, there are injuries. That's where he's got to make a decision. Am I going to play through stuff I've played through before for this franchise, or am I not going to do so? And so that's what I'm saying. I think Le'Veon Bell, week one's going to go out there and he's going to play his arse off, and he's going to play as hard as he can because he's a competitor. And there's an old adage in football, if you don't go full speed, that's when you do get hurt. So I don't question that part of it. I question when he does get hurt. We always find out afterward things guys play through, right? Matter of fact, Thurman Thomas tweeted something, I think it was a week ago, someone a card with his knee brace. He's like, yeah, that's the one I wore with a torn ACL because I didn't want to have surgery and miss a year, and he played his whole career with it. Like, never had it repaired. Like, that's remarkable.
Those were better days.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, but so I'm just, I just wonder, like, he tweaks a knee, does he play?
Yeah, but I don't
Right?
think it's questioning his competitiveness to talk about this, because it's going to be in the back of his head no matter what. No matter what. Every single time he steps in that field, he's going to be thinking about, if I tear an ACL right now, I'm never getting paid again. Never. I'm on a 1 year, $2 million deal.
Well, I think that's what his agent would be telling him. I think once he steps in the field, I don't think athletes think that way.
I think his retweet of Todd Gurley's contract yesterday in about 13 seconds means he's thinking about it right now, too.
Yeah, but
I mean, it was instant.
He's thinking about it now. But Mike, I agree he's thinking about it now, but I'm saying once he puts the helmet on, goes out for a series, he's not thinking about
I'm
that.
sure you're right to some degree, but I think when that first nick comes, when that first knee twist comes, the rest of the season is going to be in peril. I think it's going to be in his head.
I'll give you a golf analogy, all right? Tiger Woods is sitting there in the fairway at Carnoustie on the par 5.
Man, he looks old, by the way.
Well,
I mean, man.
there's a lot of miles on that.
He looks
okay.
old.
He's 42.
Is that how Olivia Mel's going to look next year?
He's 3 years younger than me. Come on, he doesn't look that old. But anyway, no, he's not thinking, boy, I shouldn't go in that bunker. He's thinking, I'm going to put this right next to the flag, and he swings, and sometimes it goes in the bunker. So I just say the mentality of the professional athlete, we're talking about a high achiever, I'm going to go out there and give it my best when it's all done, and when you get the ice pack on, you're thinking, geez, do I need to do this? Am I? That's when he brings the business part in.
That's fair.
That's what I'm saying.
It's fair.
All right, let's talk about. We've got quarterbacks to talk about, and we've got NBA. So let's stick with football here, and then we'll move on to the NBA. Rookie quarterbacks finally signed. Baker, unusual. Usually it works right from 5 up, but it's working from 1 down. Right, Baker Mayfield, the first one to come in, and then Josh Allen just came in for the Bills.
Yeah. So it's just Darnold really who's sort of hanging out there, and a couple of defensive guys.
And I know you had a Twitter question on Darnold.
No, I did not.
Oh, I saw someone send you a Twitter question on Darnold.
Oh, did we?
Yes. You're not even paying attention to your own Twitter feed. Wanted to know when Darnold was going to come in with the Jets. Well, now
Fair.
he is, because the two Bowers are there if you're playing euchre, right? They're there.
Very nice.
You like that euchre reference, don't you, Mr. Peck?
Excellent.
All right.
What we do know is that Mayfield's contract does include offset language. So the Browns were able to sort of hold some control on that. Knowing that, I can't imagine Darnold and Josh Allen don't have that as well. Look, it doesn't mean much. All it means is if they're a bust, that the respective team gets to save some money if they go and play elsewhere. But, what are we thinking on that? I mean, the Browns have had some number 1 overall busts. Quite a few.
Quite that position, yes.
And for me, the amount of busts we've had in recent years, I mean, there's been a lot more quarterbacks drafted, so the percentages sort of don't favor it. But I think it's leading to the point where these guys can't play for 6 weeks, right? Isn't that where we are with all 3 of these guys?
Can't rush them.
You can't rush. I mean, the Jets gave McCown $10 million guaranteed, and then went and drafted Darnold. Right. So obviously they're thinking that. The Browns traded for Tyrod Taylor at $16 million. Obviously they're thinking him at least for a short-term prowess.
I think your number of weeks is dead on.
Yeah.
Because and again, I saw an interview with Mitchell Trubisky where he said the best thing that ever happened to him was getting in and playing and getting beat up. He said the reps were more important than the success or failure of them. And I think that goes towards how quarterbacks are developed now. These guys start so young. They have all these quarterback tutors. So I think the whole group of these rookies, they're all going to play this year. And I think you're about right about when. I just think it's like, all right, don't start them in the season. Let them get a couple of weeks of figuring out what the NFL game looks like, how you prepare for it. But to think that these guys are going to go double-digit games without starting is a surprise. Would be a surprise to me.
Well, these teams set it up with their marketing departments, all right? Because here's how it makes sense. Hey, let's bring in average to slightly better than average quarterbacks, but guys who aren't going to win you playoff games. See Tyrod Taylor with the Bills. Made a playoff game. If he were a better passer, Bills win that game, but he's not.
Thrown for at least 100 yards.
Right. And so McCown is what he is. So what they're saying is, and we'll throw Buffalo in here too. They brought in McCarron and they have Peterman, less accomplished than McCown and Taylor by far. So anyways, they have these veteran quarterbacks, and hey, we're going to start the veterans, okay? Knowing that we're probably not really going anywhere. Taylor might be different with the Browns with everything they have, but anyway, and so we have these top quarterbacks, we're not going to start them, so we can't say, well, why would you expect throwing a rookie in there? Hey, we went with a veteran quarterback. It's not working. Many of us can predict it's not going to work with those quarterbacks. And for their first-round picks, it's like, hey, beat this guy out, which should be relatively achievable for these first-round quarterbacks.
I can't disagree. That's just how it always happens, right? Almost always.
Yeah.
But we saw two examples of these middling veterans be extremely successful last year. Extremely. I mean, Nick Foles, extremely successful for 6 weeks. Case Keenum, extremely successful and is now a $15 million per year quarterback. I mean,
both
with
because
one of the
of
best teams
injuries,
in the AFC.
but both were in there. They were because of injury.
Yep.
Right. I mean Keenum because of the Bridgewater one prior. Right. Yep. And Foles guy was retiring. Right.
Yeah.
And they brought him back.
Yeah, he said he lost his love for the game. So,
yeah.
Now again, the benefit
Wait,
is...
he didn't say that. He didn't pull Ryan O'Reilly. He said he lost his love for the game.
Did.
Wow.
But the benefit for a guy like Foles is he gets dropped into a Super Bowl caliber team.
Right.
That doesn't often happen. And I think you could argue that Nick Foles or any of the 5 or 8 quarterbacks in the NFL who are Foles-like might have had the same level of success there too, which was, I think, the danger in whether Nick Foles can go to another team and be Nick Foles or not. I have my doubts about that.
Well, he tried it. It didn't work.
Right.
Kansas City. It just did not work. But it's achievable to beat them. Darnold should fit in now because they have the number 1 pick, the number 4 pick. Right? Allen was 4. Do I have that right?
7, I think.
7.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
The quarterback 7, and then Darnold at 3.
Yeah.
Those. So the one in front, the one behind are in. Darnold will get in with the Jets.
All 3 play this year?
Absolutely.
All 3 play this year?
Yes.
Yeah.
No question about it.
There's no chance for like a Jared Goff situation.
There's so little history of those rookies not playing in their rookie year. Now, Mahomes being the exception because they were an exceptional team with a legitimate top half of the NFL starter already in place there. That doesn't normally happen when you draft a rookie quarterback that high.
All right, you have quarterbacks. We want to talk about quarterbacks playing for their next job.
Yeah, so really what I did is I just kind of assessed all 32 teams here because as fun of an offseason as we just had with quarterbacks, with all these draft picks, with the Cousins and the Alex Smith situation, it's going to be maybe the opposite next year, right? We may see a heck of a lot of veteran quarterbacks moved on from, whether that's trade, whether that's release, maybe some retirements in there, but really, most of these teams have at least some sort of question mark, right? Starting with the Arizona Cardinals right on top. I mean, is that not maybe the most interesting situation that
Bradford v. Rosen?
People aren't talking about? Yeah. I mean, have you even heard?
Same thing we just talked about.
We've barely heard Josh Rosen this offseason.
True.
Outside of a few little small headlines here and there. And none of us have heard Sam Bradford.
Nope.
Do we know if he's healthy? Is he going to be taking all the number 1 reps? Where are they going with this? Because they invested a decent amount of cash this year.
They pay him $20 million.
See, I think their approach adds
Backwards.
on to what we've already talked about, which was yes, they want Rosen. They don't want to throw Rosen right in off the bat, But so you've got Bradford to do that, but then you've got the can he be, is he, A, is he, B, can he stay healthy factor that goes with Bradford, unlike a lot of these other guys. So Rosen probably needs to be ready to play earlier than any of the other ones, but Bradford has also proven that if he can stay healthy, he's a pretty good quarterback. So because the scenario could conceivably be Bradford could start 10 games there, if not more, if they win and he's healthy.
To me, I agree, and it's one of those outlying situations that we've discussed here. But to me, the Bradford signing was more of a reaction to the rest of the roster. It was more of we've got Larry Fitzgerald for 1 more year. We might have David Johnson for 1 more year, and we can't just throw a rookie in there and hope it works, which sort of goes against everything we've just said right now, right? Because shouldn't this be the philosophy for every team? But that'll be another show.
Bradford's better to me. Bradford's better than Taylor, McCown,
Keenum.
Yeah.
Isn't that the
scenario?
He
is to me.
Isn't the Arizona scenario similar to the Kansas City scenario last year? They've got weapons on offense. They have the potential to be a decent team.
The difference, though, is that they chose every player this year. The difference is none of these guys were there last year. Mike Glennon's there, Sam Bradford's there, Josh Rosen's there because they selected them this year via free agency or via the draft. So this is their doing, and I don't know if it makes a lot of sense. If they're really going in on 1 year, I think they needed to do better than Sam Bradford. That's my
they
thinking.
couldn't.
What was
That
better
the
than
issue.
Sam Bradford?
Is Kirk Cousins better than Sam Bradford?
Well,
Yeah, but he didn't want to go there
but why?
because he wanted to go to Jacksonville or Minnesota.
That's not a good enough answer for me.
I'm just.
I think we could debate.
I had that. I had that from a very good source, by the way. It was down to those two teams.
I think we could debate your original question. Is Sam Bradford better than Kirk Cousins? I could give you an argument that the answer to that is yes. When he's healthy.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't talk about Sam Bradford's career without the injuries being, boy, if he could have stayed. I mean, when he was healthy, and it hasn't happened all that often, he's been amazing. I mean, even last year in Minnesota, when there was chatter about him getting the job over Keenum when he was recovered, because I think the coaches sat there and they go, he's a far better quarterback with a better arm and a better understanding of how to play the position.
I just think that we should all be ready for Sam Bradford trade talks. Again, just like it happened in Philly, where they paid a small signing bonus and then shot
Even before the
in
season.
That's what I'm saying.
So if Rosen shows he can handle the job, they just bang, he's out.
I think that's definitely possible. There's a few teams that have that scenario coming into camp here, which we'll get to. But just going down the line here of teams, I think the next one on the list has to be Baltimore, right?
Yeah, Joe Flacco.
I mean, where do you guys stand with him in terms of? I mean, he's sort of a difficult cut next year with the dead cap, but it's doable. It's doable. And Lamar Jackson's obviously getting a lot of the press right now.
I think there's a lot of questions whether Lamar Jackson can and will be a successful NFL quarterback. So whether Baltimore feels like they know the answer to that question has a lot to do with it too. But to your point, I think Joe Flacco has just kind of been a guy.
He's Joe Flacco.
He's a guy. When the team around him is great, he can win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
When the team around him is not great, he isn't good enough to elevate the team around him.
I was just about to say, Trent Dilfer's thinking, I got the same number of Super Bowls as Joe Flacco.
Yeah.
Right?
I think Flacco's about 2 notches better than Dilfer.
Dilfer threw a better deep ball.
Oof. Man, that's not good for Joe Flacco.
But yeah, Flacco is. I take Flacco. Being here in Buffalo, we
is Joe
take
Flacco Kirk
right?
Cousins? Are they the same guy?
Yeah, that's
maybe.
close.
Maybe I don't know. Listen, Flacco's been a good quarterback here. Let's not forget. I mean, he's been in the AFC. He's been the same. They had some battles with Brady,
Yeah.
and Roethlisberger, Come on, I think if you're out west, it'd be a different story. But anyhow, I think Joe Flacco does have to have a great year, or they will move on.
They'll move on.
I think he's got more than 6 weeks.
I think it's 50-50 right now for sure. He's got to figure that out this year.
Who else is on your list?
Everybody.
Okay.
Everybody's on the list.
Cincinnati is the next one.
Same situation with Dalton, but the money's extremely easy. After this year, it's no dead cap for 2 years. So they've essentially got 2 free years on him to do whatever they want. Either they keep him, they restructure it a little bit if they need to, or he's out the door.
Is he better than Joe Flacco?
I don't know. I don't know that answer.
Is Andy Dalton better than Joe Flacco?
I don't know.
No, because he hasn't won as much as Flacco. They're about the same guy in my mind.
Yeah, I'm not
close.
saying they're not.
It's close. I mean, he's had A.J. Green for a few years now to really kind of make him look better than maybe he is.
And that's not a negative. If Andy Dalton's had the ability to get the ball to A.J. Green, that's part of being a good quarterback.
To me, this is a one and done for Andy Dalton. And I think the same with Joe Flacco.
And they have no real plan B
That's
there,
the problem.
Those
That's
swap teams.
And that's why nobody's really talking about Andy Dalton, is that there's really nobody there right now to – so that's a team that could be assessing the trade. And we're going to talk about maybe in a player that I think might be a good fit there. But coming down the list here, the Browns, we've sort of talked about that. I think Tyrod maybe gets 10 weeks there. I think Tyrod gets more of an opportunity to play than maybe the guy like an A.J. McCarron in Buffalo or even a McCown in New York. I think Tyrod
if they win 5 games, that's a revelation there.
He seems to have sort of taken in with the players in that roster offensively. It seems like the wide receivers sort of like him in terms of
the same
how
thing
that's
happened
working.
in Buffalo until you actually have to have him watch him play.
Everybody likes Tyrod.
Tyrod Taylor is a pretty good quarterback. Tyrod Taylor is a pretty good quarterback.
Will this receiving core? Is it better than the receiving core he had in Buffalo?
It's 4 times better.
All right, so then, I think Tyrod's got a chance.
That's what I'm saying. I really do think that there's something to be said about Tyrod as a 1-year bridge and possibly really shaking things up in Cleveland for the next couple of years. Isn't this the perfect next thing for them to do wrong in Cleveland? Isn't it? To draft a perfectly viable quarterback, number 1 overall, and then have your cheap free agent trade piece take you into the playoffs and then have to stick around for 2 more years. Right? I mean,
yes.
But it's not even unfeasible. It's not. Because
No,
Tyrod Taylor has shown he can take a pretty terrible Bills team that should have been 2-14 into the postseason.
Well, they should have been like 6-10.
I just think that there's going to be pressure.
I agree with you, Mike.
There's going to be enough games from Tyrod Taylor where there's going to be pressure to say, how are we letting this happen at the quarterback position when you've got Baker Mayfield ready to come in?
I don't know. We just talked about how A.J. Green has made Dalton sort of put Dalton on a pedestal a little bit for 3-4 years. You can't tell me Jarvis Landry, Josh Gordon, and Corey Coleman can't do that for Tyrod Taylor. Not to mention 2 viable tight ends and 3 running backs out of the backfield. I mean, there's a lot of weapons there. And Tyrod's a decent decision maker.
Tyrod's thinking to himself, geez, I should have went to the west end of the lake years ago.
This is a bit of a dream scenario for him. I mean, he's getting $16 million.
Right.
He really doesn't have to do too much because if he's terrible, it's Baker time. I mean, right?
Right.
I mean, yeah, he's going to have to work on his next contract after that. But this is a bit of a dream scenario for him. And I think he could really shake things up with this whole process.
Interesting.
That's definitely something to watch. Let's move down the list here. We know about the Aaron Rodgers situation. He's not getting paid yet, by the way. It's not happening. There's been many of people close to that organization that have told him and everybody else that they're going to wait a year, and that's fine.
Yeah, they're upset about his appearance on Shark Week. So,
and Danica Patrick had a really bad showing at the ESPYs. But anything.
Yeah.
Anyway,
By the way, Olivia Munn.
That's a downgrade in my mind.
That's a barstool conversation.
That's what I'm saying.
Right
He
there.
downshifted to Danica.
Yes.
I'm just no.
Yikes.
I don't know them personally, so who knows?
Puns.
Okay.
There's no puns on this show.
All right. Only Munns?
Andrew
No puns?
Luck.
All right.
Andrew Luck has got to be the next one on the list here because Andrew Luck has got dead cap of $40 million right now, and it drops to $12.8 million next year. So if you need a visual proof that Andrew Luck is on the hot seat or on the bubble for Indy, it's that, right? His contract sort of shuts off after this year with the guarantees and the dead cap.
So go prove your arm is fixed.
I mean, they're all in right now, but
They have no choice.
That's going to be a really interesting situation to watch because a guy who was the perennial, Pro Bowler who was waiting in the wings of Peyton Manning could be out the door in 4 years.
You skipped over one that I'm really interested about is Houston.
Yeah.
Reason I bring this up is there is an incredible over-the-top amount of love for Deshaun Watson. And that's not to take anything away from what he did he started 6 games, folks.
Is that what it was?
6 games. He looked great through 19 touchdowns in 6 games. He looked great, but it's 6 games, then he got hurt. And I heard people talking about him as a potential MVP candidate. Now, that could happen, but to base that on 6 games is a little far-fetched for me, and apparently you're thinking that he either might not be all the way back, or there may be some things at play there too.
I just think they're going to have to slow play it, right? And from his standpoint, we've seen mobile quarterbacks who get banged up sort of change their stride, right? We've seen this here. We've seen this across the league with high-profile guys.
Yeah, where they tell you don't run anymore, and the guy's like,
if you start
that's all I've ever done.
If you start changing this guy's approach, which they probably have to because that's a nasty injury, then are you changing too much, right?
Now, the difference is he's got maybe the best offensive mind and quarterback coach in the league in Bill O'Brien, who even shifted on the fly when they went to Watson to get him to where he was for those 6 games. That's a big difference in my mind.
I also think he's got a heck of an arm. And it's underrated. Yes, he can move, but he's got a heck of an arm. He could be a pocket passer if he needed to be. I just think it's going to take time for him to convert to that if they need him to.
All right. A couple other ones on here. There's so many teams. I look at this list. I'm there's so many teams with quarterback issues, right? I mean, Jacksonville, Bortles.
Bortles is probably good for a year, maybe 2, but they could get out after this year if they need to. Like I said, that wasn't really that much of an extension structurally. It's just a little bit more money now to say, yeah, well, you earned yourself another year here.
He's got to get a lot better. They got a good team around him. He's got to be the Bortles from that Pittsburgh AFC Championship game and not the Bortles from a lot of the other parts of the season.
The divisional game, because they lost in the AFC Championship to the
Patriots.
Correct.
Patriots.
Thank you.
Come
Yes,
on, Paul,
correct.
get your facts straight.
It's a numbers show.
I'm surprised I knew that. Rivers. Phillip Rivers is interesting, right?
So let's package Rivers, Eli Manning, and Roethlisberger all in the same conversation.
Okay.
All going ahead into expiring contracts next year, right? All like what, 36, 37?
37 and
37.
Rivers,
So
right?
2 years this year, next year.
This
left
year,
on their
next
deals?
year.
Okay.
Obviously, they're all safe this year.
Are all
I
three
would
Hall
assume.
of Famers? Roethlisberger is.
Roethlisberger
Manning,
is.
I guess Manning is.
will be because
Yeah.
of New York and Super Bowls.
Rivers probably should be
And a name
statistically,
Manning, by the
but
way.
I don't think he's won anything, right? I mean,
No.
He hasn't.
his
Nope.
stats are as good as
But
any
you know
of them.
what? He'll join his fellow Charger in there, Dan Fouts, who, right, didn't win anything.
Look at Chargers are a sneaky good team for 2018.
That's a
If you're
lot
out
of
there-
people are saying
if you're
they're
out
the
there
team.
dropping bets and stuff. Consider the Chargers for that division. Consider them long term. I like that team. I think they can get better in the next month or so, maybe with some moves. That's a good team. So maybe this is a year Rivers sort of puts himself in that conversation. But if he doesn't, and Eli doesn't, because Eli, who knows with Eli? Eli could be boom or bust again this year. I mean, just based on the way they've had to change things. Maybe Saquon Barkley kind of bails him out offensively, but there's a very realistic chance that all three of these guys are done next year. Ben might walk away. Eli might walk away.
Right.
Rivers may stay one more. We sort of have to see how the Chargers situation pans out here. But
He's a football maniac, so he's the guy who you'll have to literally drag.
I don't
off
think he
the
wants to
field.
go home to his 6 or 7 kids. What does he have? I think he's got like 11 kids.
Rivers?
It's ridiculous.
I think you're.
I mean, he's got to keep playing football, right?
I think their college education's taken care of.
Yeah, no.
I think they,
None of them are pining for more money. That's for sure.
I love that he equipped his vehicle with a video system. Like he has a driver.
Because he didn't want to move from San Diego, so
Right.
he has like an hour plus commute every day.
So he watches his game film in his vehicle.
Yeah, he doesn't drive.
That's
He has
efficient.
system. Right.
That
He
is
has-
efficient.
Right. He has
Right. That's
perfect. That's
pretty slick, right?
Is he
there.
driving?
No.
No.
Right.
It's a book on tape, the game film.
That doesn't seem effective.
Ryan Tannehill
Yeah,
with the Miami Dolphins.
Dalton version 2.0. Andrew Luck version 3.0. It's
Right.
really all it is. You're talking about a guy who was probably on the bubble this year, but financially it didn't sort of work out. They ended up restructuring him, which actually is going to add more dead cap for next year, which that one sort of behooves me a little bit. But I don't envision him back. I think him and Dalton and Luck and Flacco are probably not back with their respective teams. I think the same for Jameis Winston, which is a name coming up here. I think he's 50-50 not just based on the issues off the field, which are silly, but just the lack of production, lack of consistency, right? I mean, he came in as a massive arm that could move around a little bit, that could kind of withstand anything. And I think he's been sort of soft. He's had his 4,000 yards. He's had, some great success, but if it's not consistently done through this year, there's no way they're paying him $21 million next year.
Oakland / Vegas.
Yeah.
Derek Carr.
Yeah. Really sneaky, terrible contract, right? Everybody saw the 5 for 125 and we're freaking out that this was the next man up and he got the big contract. Look, this was a 2-year deal on paper structurally, and Oakland can get out of this thing pretty quickly next year if they need to. They can save $15 million by cutting him next year.
What's easier, getting out of Oakland or getting out of his contract?
They might need to do both next year.
Right.
Just I don't get
I
out early.
I think John Gruden is going to make Carr be great.
Well, that was the other point. Like, he's got John Gruden there.
I think I love Derek Carr. Personally, 2 years ago, I thought he's the one quarterback in the league that I would have wanted on my team if you gave me the choice of every one of them. He was bad last year. They were bad. His weapons are somewhat questionable, which hurts him a little bit. But boy, I think Gruden finds the way to get the most out of him.
And the time you're talking about is when he got this contract, right? He looked great. He looked the part. He looked like the franchise leader. He was saying all the right things. But for me, you look at the structure of this contract, and the Raiders are thinking what I'm thinking. And they weren't very confident in his long-term possibilities, because if they were, this would have been a 4-year deal, right? Out of 5, not a 2-year deal out of 5, because they structured this to get out of it if they needed to, and they might have to do that. So keep an eye on that. Last one, similar, Garoppolo. Don't look at the numbers and get too scared. This is a 1-year deal. This is a 1-year deal.
Really?
If it needs to be, this is a 1-year, $37 million deal. Okay? They can get out of this. It's a $13 million dead cap hit. It's considerable savings next year if they need to move on from him. I don't anticipate that. I mean, obviously they're going to give him a fair shake.
I think he gets a ridiculous raise and a long-term deal after this because I think he's going to be great.
Everybody seems to think, including himself.
Right. Yeah. What was that?
Yeah.
I thought he was better than Brady.
Look at that was sort of taken out of context. Okay. This is just a guy who's confident who says, "Yeah, heck yeah, I can do this." And you got to think that way to be a quarterback. I think, but
NFL people,
Belichick may have thought that way.
They love him. Look, and he looks the part, doesn't he?
Everything about him. Yes.
And he's got a chance to revive one of the best franchises in the game.
And he's got a great coach, and they've got nice weapons there now too.
Decent. I would have liked to see them improve that wide receiver core a little bit more, but I understand they're probably taking their time with that. They want to see if they've got some value. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with taking the Patriot way and sort of seeing if these middle of the road guys, in terms of their salaries, can make this work. Because if that's the case, obviously they can go and build that defense up again.
All right, we're going to move on to basketball here. Sure. And we're going long today.
Yeah,
tough
plenty
cookies.
to talk about.
Start of the football season. Why not?
Yeah. Well, we got it. Yeah, but that's fine. And NBA news happening with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Kevin Love, a 4-year extension with the Cavs for $120 million, and his average salary is going to be at least $30 million. Interesting contract. I love the exchange on Twitter between LeBron and Love because there's supposedly all this hate between those two. That didn't certainly seem that way, or at least they're playing nice on the face of it. But $30 million a year for Kevin Love. Is he staying in Cleveland for the 4 years in that extension?
So I sort of did a pros cons look at this because it's shocking in that it's a 4-year deal to me. And we've talked about this and the length of contracts, kind of to death on this show. But this one really sort of baffles me because we've sort of seen a trend of teams taking the 2-year approach, whether that's the player's decision or the team saying, that's as much as we can do. They could have easily done that here and given him a 2-year max extension, which would have been more money over the next 3 years for him, and sort of.
And this kicks in 2019.
Yeah, so this runs through 23, but it's not going to look that way. For me, this is the deal, and I spoke about this last night in Cleveland. Actually, for me, the deal is we've got to lock him in and give him a role because number one, we've never done that with him, right? We've never actually seen Kevin Love, the Kevin Love we acquired from Minnesota,
right? So, be the focal point of the offense.
Sure. So maybe that works gangbusters. We don't know. I mean, he's 30 now. He's going to be 30. I think that's a lot to ask, but for me, it's. We've got to win a few more games. We've got to get some more butts in the seats because we can't, we're going to bleed revenue based on this LeBron loss, right?
They couldn't do what happened after LeBron left the
which
first
is just
time.
Be stagnant, right? And let everything sort of die around him.
Right.
So it makes sense in that regard. It also makes sense to give him the multi-year contract because if they're thinking like I think they're thinking, they're going to trade him.
Yes.
Right? And you don't want to trade a guy in an expiring contract, which he had. So it makes sense to put an extension out there, add some years, and then probably get a decent return. Look, if he's an All-Pro, right? If he returns to All-Pro 20 and 10, and he's the offensive and defensive player on this team, right? The best player on this team, they're going to dangle him out there in January. We're not even waiting until next summer. They're going to put him out there as soon as they can. And if you've got a guy who can do that on both sides of the ball, and teams like Indiana, right? Some of these middling teams that don't have a ton of max contracts that could take on a guy like this who can fit pieces. Utah, another great fit. Young players with big guys around him. I think there's going to be probably teams looking for him as soon as the trade deadline comes up this year in 2018. So this could be a 1-year deal, really. He might not even get to the extension part of this in Cleveland, but a player of that caliber with years left is just a better trade return for Cleveland. So assets-wise, it's a nice move for them. Why did they have to go 4 years? They could have tacked on 2 more, made this a sort of a 3-year deal, and still gotten probably the same return for Kevin Love.
He probably asked for it.
Yeah, but they didn't have to do it.
No, they didn't have to
do it. Because here's the other part of this, and this is the really interesting part, okay? When the Cavaliers acquired Kyle Korver from Atlanta, they gave up a first-round pick, either in 2019 or 2020. Those are the conditions. The conditions also are that Cleveland can't be a top 10 pick, right? If the Cavaliers are not a top 10 pick this year or next year, they forfeit the pick. if they are a top 10 pick, they keep the first round pick. And if they do it this year and next year, if they're top 10 this year and next year, that condition turns into 2 second-round picks, which is a far less price to pay.
That's correct.
Okay? So they want to be lottery picks.
Yes.
They want to be top 10 this year and next year. Bringing Kevin Love back does not help that at all. In fact, it probably takes them out of the top 10. They're probably going to win enough games in this terrible Eastern Conference to be maybe close to playoffs, probably not playoffs, but right there. And being in the middle is not where they want to be. They want to be lottery for this reason alone. So to me, that throws everything off. Knowing that they are probably going to lose a first-round pick, that's a big deal for a team that just lost, a greatest of all-time player and needs to rebuild on the fly rather than try to break it down and start over. So I don't understand that part of it.
I think I understand a little bit about, as much as the logic is there, that it might logically have said Cleveland should have just ripped it all down after LeBron leaves and do what a lot of other teams have done, which is get rid of anything and everything and start from scratch and build back up, because we've also seen that work in all various sports as well, too. It's hard to do sometimes, and it's hard to do to a fan base that was used to being in the conference finals and competing for championships. And to me, this is, I know we've got to rebuild, but we're not willing to go all the way to it, so let's at least give our fans somebody to cheer for, somebody they know, somebody we can put on that building across from the Quicken Loans Arena if we want to, right or wrong. And I think you have made a case, and a lot of other teams have made a case, that if you don't go all the way to a rebuild, you're hurting yourself. But somewhere along the line, going all the way to a rebuild doesn't always get the right kind of reaction from your fan base either.
Can I predict where he is?
Let's do it.
Philly.
Yeah, I've heard it a lot.
He fits Philly.
They've got to make. Believe it or not,
he fits a lot of teams.
This was the year for them to get him. They had cap space, and they sort of just blew that away on no-name guys, right? But this was the year for them to go and get them. So maybe Cleveland wouldn't do it. It's possible that Cleveland sort of had this premonition in place already, and he was going to be the guy moving forward for a few years, or at least for 2018. But I have heard that. It does make a lot of sense with the kids around him. They're going to have to sign 2 of those monsters next year. So, the window of value is closing in Philadelphia, and a guy like Love does make sense, but he makes sense right now.
Yes, I agree.
And they can't trade him for 6 months now.
Yeah. All right. Fascinating there with the Cavaliers. They're certainly not. Listen, even if Kevin Love is a focal point, I don't think they're a playoff team.
They're probably close, though, and that is to their detriment.
Maybe.
Isn't that crazy? It's crazy. It's totally correct and the reality of pro sports now. But it's just when that comes out of your mouth, you're like, what?
Well, you think about it. There are so many teams in the East right now. You're like,
but none of them are really great except for Boston.
Right, I know.
They're all sort
Boston,
of in the pack.
Toronto, if he shows up, he did pass his physical.
Sure.
Kawhi Leonard. In Milwaukee?
I don't know.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Chicago?
Indiana's could be decent. I don't know.
But Orlando,
Knicks.
Atlanta, Knicks, Brooklyn.
Yeah, there's a lot of those.
Yeah.
And Cleveland with, this Colin Sexton kid and Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson. And
Charlotte?
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe with Kemba?
Maybe. Washington's up there.
Washington,
That's
yes.
a team. That's a team. But we're not giving you 8 good ones.
That's true.
So
maybe Cleveland's got a
aren't
shot.
Aren't they in the conversation? Yeah.
Yes, they are. All right. That's going to do it for this edition of the SpotTrack.com podcast. Couple things. Hey, make sure you sign up for the premium service. You get Mike's breakdowns on contracts via podcast and all sorts of other exclusive content to premium members. The app, make sure you download the app and rate us on iTunes. Thumbs up all the way around. All right, for Mike Giannetti, the founder of SpotTrack.com, Paul Peck, I'm Kevin Sylvester. Thanks for listening to the SpotTrack.com podcast.